Hi, everybody, and happy summer. I have in my lap my Fluffy and Chocolate. Fluffy is here on my right, white and fluffy, and Chocolate is the one with the chocolate nose and the chocolate ears. And these two guys were allies this past week. They really did something amazing, and I'm going to tell you about it. And because they like to get down, I'm going to let them get down, but think of these beautiful, fluffy little guys as I tell you what happened. Okay, you guys. Where I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I'm at the base of a big granite mountains right outside of my office. Someday maybe we'll be able to put a camera and you'll see it rises up 10,678 feet to the top. And it's all granite, one big granite slab. And then it has all kinds of paths and gulches that come down. And where I live, one of those gulches comes right from this big mountain and goes right by the side of my house. And I love it because it's like this wonderful, rugged, open space that is kind of inspiring every day. Well, 5 days ago, on July 7th, I was playing with Chocolate and Fluffy that you just saw, and we were on the floor downstairs, and we were very near the back screen door. The door was open and the screen was shut, and it was open to the outdoors. And the cats love to be there. And just in a playful moment, I laid down on the floor between them, and they like to put their paws on my face and on my arm. And that's what they were doing as my head went down onto the floor. It doesn't have carpet. It is like a wood linoleum. It looks like you're lying on wood, feels sort of like you're on wood. And where my head went down, I was aware that it was very near one of the supporting feet of a china cabinet that I have right there beside that back door. And as I hit the floor, having fun with the cats, Fluffy went just as loud and aggressive, and I couldn't relate to what was happening. What is it? And I thought maybe it's a bug. Maybe he's seeing something on the floor. So I was on my back and I turned over, and now my face is right next to the bottom of this china cabinet where my head was right near the leg. And I'm staring right at a snake. It is a snake with a brown color, and it is long enough to have coils. And I thought, my God, this looks like a rattler. Oh, I jumped up. I ran. I got a broom in the off chance that it should start to move. And then I thought, I've got to call my brother. My brother has a biology background. He's hunted all his life. He knows how to lasso snakes. So I called him, he answered. I said, come, help me, there's a snake in the house. He said, I'll be right there. Well, it took him 10 minutes to drive here. And meanwhile, what did Fluffy and Chocolate do? Here I am standing with that broom, not knowing whether it's a rattler, it would be a small rattler, but it could be one, or what, and the two cats come right over to the bottom of that chest, and they lie down like heads faced right toward the snake. Fluffy keeps getting up and going like to check out if the snake is still there. And during those 10 minutes waiting for my brother to get there, the cats were like this totally brave, like they didn't care that there was a snake there, and they just kept their paws and their bodies kind of in this relationship while I stood there, humble, fragile human with a broom. And my brother came. He's really good. He had one of those lassos with a bar and the rope. It didn't take him long. He got that snake out and it's dangling like this. And he said, look, he said, it is trying to look like a diamondback rattlesnake, which is what I thought, maybe, God, what if it were? And he said, but this is a bull snake. And that's one of the things bull snakes do, is they mimic the pattern of a diamondback rattler. And so the whole world is afraid of them. And then I learned that what a bull snake can do and why the rattlesnakes hate the bull snakes that try to mimic them is that a bull snake, if it wants to or tries, can coil itself rapidly around a diamondback rattler and kill it. I did not know until this episode that the bull snake, which tries to look like a diamondback rattler, has the ability to coil this strong body around a rattler and kill it. Well, we went out onto a hill. There's a hill that drops off next to my place, and my brother took the what we estimated then must be a young, thin rattler all the way down the hill. And as he was coming back, I was waiting at the top of the hill, and my brother is coming back, and we both saw at the same time. It was a buck deer. Just walked out from behind the trees, started walking toward us, eating grass. It was as if the deer did not care that we were there at all. It came all the way up to a few yards from us, and I said to my brother, wow, this is sort of like the Garden of Eden. And we went into the house, and my brother said, I wonder how that snake got in here. And we checked around, and under that back door, when we stood in the house, there was one sliver about 2 inches long, not very wide, of light that I'd not noticed until then. We were looking for where there could be some crevice. And my brother said, that's got to be it. The snake could come squeeze its body. So we fixed that. It's now, everything is back to normal. But when I said it's sort of like the Garden of Eden, I've thought about that ever since. What is supposed to be an idyllic moment in history when humans and animals lived in peace together, and that it is always held up as this is one of those goals of this planet, for humans to live peacefully together and to not kill everything for the sake of killing, and to let animals also have a balance on this planet with us. And as I was thinking about this, I ended up realizing that it was taking me back to moments when I was working on Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 1 and 2. And I did a tremendous amount of research in the Book of Enoch and Bibles and the Zohar and on and on. And with this whole idea of the Bible describing a kind of metaphor for an idyllic kind when the God force created humans with consciousness, but gave us strict order. And the strict order to those new humans that in the metaphor were called Adam and Eve: do not eat or even touch the tree at the center of the garden, because it is the tree of good and evil. And if the humans did, if they disobeyed, they would die. So who was the reptilian that showed up in the Garden of Eden and told Eve that God was not telling the truth about the tree of good and evil, that she would not die if she ate from that tree at the center of the garden? What was the reason that a serpent entity would provoke a quick rebellion in the newly made and innocent humans by saying that God was not telling the truth. And so Eve ate from that off-limits tree and set in motion an evolutionary history that allegedly has opened the earth and perhaps the universe to some kind of battle between evil and good. Well, today I went to one of my library shelves and I found it's a 1945 Oxford University Press edition of the Bible. I've had it since I was in college. And I turned to Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, that reads, quote, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And then man became a living soul." Living soul is one of the pivots in Genesis that always has given me pause. It's as if the containers were made for the living souls. Now in verse 8, Genesis, "And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed." And this was Adam. Verse 9, "And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil." Verse 21, "And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and God took one of Adam's ribs and made a woman." This was Eve. Chapter 3, verse 2, "And the woman Eve said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die." Verse 4, "And the serpent said unto the woman Eve, Ye shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil." Then came so-called angelic Nephilim that had sex with human females and created a race of tall giants with 6 fingers and 6 toes. And after that, the God force was so repulsed by the rebellious, sinful behaviors of humans that Sodom and Gomorrah were nuked by some terrible heat weapon, followed by the flooding of the whole world and destruction of all humans except Noah, his family, and allegedly every species of animal life on earth. So if that Garden of Eden reptile is a metaphor about conflict between the God force and something else that influences humans on earth, what is that fight about? Are there wars over territory, cosmic, galactic territories between extraterrestrials? Or are there warriors from other dimensions and timelines that have always confused and deceived humans in this matter universe? Before the Great Flood, there was a man in Mesopotamia named Enoch, who was the father of Methuselah. That Enoch wrote a book that said angels in his day could be seen as physical forms and could copulate with human females. Even astronomer, best-selling author, and UFO debunker Carl Sagan co-authored a book with Russian scientist I.S. Shavatsky called, quote, "Intelligent Life in the Universe." And in that book, they wrote, quote, "There will be those that have not and are starving or will starve, and there will be much dissension, and there will be more conflict on this world and in this plane. The Sumerian civilization is depicted by the descendants of the Sumerians themselves to be a non-human origin. A succession of strange creatures appears over the course of several generations. Their only apparent purpose is to instruct, to teach mankind, like the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Each knows of the mission and accomplishments of his predecessors. When a great inundation, the flood, threatens the survival of the newly introduced knowledge among men, steps are taken to ensure its preservation. Thereby, the straightforward nature of the Garden of Eden account is about contact with superior beings, and this is notable. They are described as beings, semi-demons, and as personages. They are never described as gods. Close quote, Carl Sagan and Shklovsky in their book, Intelligent Life in the Universe. And as I coped with trying to deal with some of the challenging contradictions and the confusion and the incomprehensibility of so many facets of trying to investigate animal mutilations, human abductions, crop formations, why our government and other governments of the world, with knowledge of non-human bodies and non-human technologies and craft, why would they choose for 70 years to keep this as a secret from the human family? Of all life forms on Earth that deserve to be told the truth about our relationship with whatever intelligence the serpent in the garden represented. If it is extraterrestrial, we deserve to know that. If it is beings and intelligences from another dimension, we should know that. If it is us from timelines, past or future, we especially should know that, because that implies that we are at an intersection of technology on this planet in which humans are beginning to move into the technologies that have befuddled and astounded and manipulated and controlled this planet Earth and the humans on it for at least the last 5,000 to 12,000 years. Göbekli Tepe dates back to 12,000. So my assumption now is that at least two categories of non-human intelligences have been involved with the forbidden history of mankind and modern humanity. I think they are other dimensional beings and biological life forms from other solar systems, and that those two categories can include time travelers moving past or into the future. Some, I am convinced now in 2018, have been utilizing underground caverns and spaces on this planet for millions of years. They would look at us as not being the original owners, the original territory deservers on this planet. They would assume that their alien involvement with this planet for millions of years means that this planet is their territory to do with what they want. In an extraordinary book entitled The Order, O-R-D-E-R, The Order, by U.S. Marine Captain Bo Peterson, he describes what he calls a Starman intervention theory for the origin of humanity, which parallels closely what we've been talking about in many ways in Genesis, which has been a biblical story, but adds, instead of the God force, that the manipulation and the creation of the metaphor of humanity and Adam and Eve was done by extraterrestrials. He writes, long before the great civilizations arose from the dust of Earth, a more advanced race of beings came to this planet. As they stepped from their spaceships, they found themselves revered as gods. Their ability to descend from the heavens and sophisticated appearance put them in immediate control of everything on planet Earth. Their ships and equipment became sacred. People got down to them on their knees. Their knowledge deified them, and when they departed, they left behind at least one new religion, the ancient Hebrew religion that grew out of Mesopotamia. So what has the Starman intervention theory done with the Lord, with the God force, with the divine field? It has simply placed that force above the physical earth, stars, and universe, back where it belongs in the spirit of goodness and life. This, therefore, is the machinery of life, the merciless force of nature which seems both unpredictable and arbitrary in many ways, the same force which animates the delicate clouds in orders of the seasons with impeccable regularity. The God force, the indomitable spirit which resides within the temple of the human body, in the soul. But while the God force is represented in the goodness on this planet of Jesus and avatars, the God force powers encompass the evil of Satan as well. He is the light and the dark, the positive and the negative, the Alpha and the Omega. He is the order. That is a quote from U.S. Marine Captain Bo Peterson in his book, The Order. If the Bible were literally correct, all the deceived humans and hybrid giants that were born from the sexual intercourse of the Nephilim with human females, and these giants with six-fingered hands and six-fingered toes are described in various parts of the Bible as being the byproduct of this sexual interaction between human females. And the Nephilim, defined in a curious way as perhaps angelic or the fallen angel category, and some others in the government say that they were strictly extraterrestrials. Well, whatever they were and whatever they did, if the Noah flood was a penalty to Earth and humanity because of, we'll call it, violating the rules from the Garden of Eden, then the flood took out all of humanity except Noah and his family and the animals that were saved, perhaps in genetic tubes. The ship with all the animals has never made any sense. Lots of metaphors. Well, if anything like that happened, then we have to look at this and face that Noah would be like the last person on earth, and therefore Noah would be like in a bottleneck of a narrow bottle. This would be where all of the next phase of humanity came from and through, would be that genetic bloodline of Noah. And that could be the bloodline of Adam and whatever else was happening that was mixing with humans that kept making hybrids. If so, are manipulated and deceived humans totally responsible for all that has happened over the centuries, including wars and genocide? The confusion that humankind has had about its schizophrenic, violent, loving nature. So much violence and so much love. And whether the universe is inherently harsh or benign. It was that very question that has come up so often by people in the human abduction syndrome to me in interviews. It was addressed in Time magazine's October 28th, 1996 issue, and it was comments about the Bible's book of Genesis. Quote, "In the beginning there were no thorns, and snakes spent their time not biting people but chatting with them. Only when man fell to temptation did the natural world receive a coating of evil. But according to Darwinism, the evil in nature lies at its very roots, instilled by the Creator, the force in natural selection. After all, natural selection is chronic competition, untrammeled by moral rules. Heedless selfishness and wanton predation are traits likely to endure. If these things are sins, then the roots of sin lie at the origin force that put all this in motion, not just of humankind, but of all life. Close quote. Now, Enoch, from his book writing, and Bo Peterson, the Marine, they would argue that the rebellious ones, the Sumerians, that word means watchers, the Sumerian watchers, or perhaps their relationship with something that falls into another dimension that we might call angels. This is very confusing about which word of which entity is in what category as you read the Bible or the Book of Enoch or anything, because there is a mixture of angels and demons and the God force and something that creates hell, and then we get into other life in the universe, and that's extraterrestrial biological entities. But if they can travel in timelines and they can travel in other dimensions, how complex is this universe, and how complex were those orders in the Garden of Eden by the force demanding rules with Adam and Eve. These men, Enoch and Bo Peterson. Peterson wrote, quote, "The story of Eden was significantly altered by early churchmen into a description of man's fall from a state of divine grace through an act of disobedience to God's will. The burden of this sin was then placed squarely on man's shoulders, when, in fact, the humans were but a pawn in a battle among the angels," close quote. That whole idea of humans being pawns in the battle of angels and substitute other dimensions, that idea was not even on the horizon of my consciousness in 1979, when I began investigating the mysterious bloodless deaths of animals throughout the United States and other parts of the world. Back then, I knew nothing about extraterrestrials and little about the angels in this concept of a war. There had been my own experiences with light in the form of crosses that have saved my life. And I knew that inside me, I have a soul. And I know that that soul is real and that it can reach out in some way to a dimension that must be close by in moments that are mortal or potentially mortal, and call out for help, and help can come. One or all of the non-human intelligences have manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create a series of humanoid workers on Earth. I'm convinced that is the true reason for the manipulation of primates, evolving primates, to create all of these different selections of what now we are a Homo sapien sapien, the latest model. And that the non-human entities also harvest tissue and fluid from animals and humans. Now, the purpose for human creation might have served a multi-level agenda, an experiment to unite the divine spirit with primitive animal, to use the petri dish of planet Earth with all of its water, to test this new sort of hypostatic creature, the soul from above, the body container evolving on Earth from evolving primates. And while the humans did the work, the elder watchers or Sumerians used these new creatures as they were evolving to mine and build various machines such as the pyramids, ziggurats, and temples, harvested information and genetic material from the humans and bodies and other Earth life for application in galactic trade of clones, androids, and cyborgs as commerce, perhaps not even just in interstellar trade routes. But perhaps there is commerce from dimension to dimension, and perhaps even on timelines that we don't yet understand. Whatever happened in the Garden of Eden that created the illegitimate hybrid giants described in the book of Genesis, the original experiment was spoiled and provoked the wrath of God in the great flood. The perpetuation of the experiment through Noah's bloodline perhaps produced a human history which might be compared to stepchildren who had different parents, a difficult, confusing childhood, and then who grew into rebellious teenagers resisting parental control. It is so curious that when humans did seem to work together in harmony on a project, such as the Tower of Babel, discussed in the Bible, where everyone would speak the same language, that some other force interfered to cause chaos, again reminiscent of what happened in the Garden of Eden. What was that serpent? Why did it come into the garden, the innocence of the newly made Adam and Eve, and provoke rebellion against the God force's warning about not to touch or eat from the tree of good and evil? The most comforting thought is that our creators do not want us to destroy ourselves, and that's what that warning in the original garden had to do with not tampering with the conflicts of good and evil. To divert us from self-destruction, our watchers might be on the brink of revealing themselves more straightforwardly, sort of as they have done from the 60s onward periodically, with showing up in places like Malmstrom Air Force Base and interfering with nuclear missiles, sending the signal that they are not going to allow a nuclear war on Earth. And people in the human abduction syndrome have been told quite clearly by entities in front of them, when you set off atomic or hydrogen bombs on this Earth, in this matter world, you are tearing into dimensions you know nothing about, and you are destroying in other dimensions. So this again, using the Garden of Eden metaphor, 70 years ago, the United States of America thought that the development of the atomic bomb would be the greatest weapon ever developed, and it would keep everybody at peace. But they didn't know the destruction that they were causing beyond Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that other intelligences have been trying to make it very clear. Which of those intelligences may have some relationship to the reptilian in the garden, or the mysterious Nordics, or the seemingly commonly distributed gray beings that are clones, androids, and cyborgs made by the prime intelligence that our government calls extraterrestrial biological entities that have heads shaped like a pear with a curved chin. Abductee and author Anna Hayes also received the following information about opposing forces in the unseen and matter worlds during one of her contacts with a non-human intelligence. Quote, "It is from this interdimensional conflict that your human concepts of good versus evil and God versus the devil emerged. One group of advanced beings wished to see humans evolve into wholeness and equality and co-creatorship, while another group of beings desires to stunt the evolution of humanity so this other group, can continue to utilize the resources of humanity for its alien self-serving purposes. The latter group has come to represent the dark or evil forces within the collective human unconscious, while the former has emerged into your mythologies of the gods. Because of this cosmic conflict, attempts have been made by both sides throughout your history to train the evolving humans. One set of teachings will lead humans to evolve, and the other to digress, not evolve. The ploy of distorting the helpful teachings has been used repeatedly through your species' development by the forces that do not wish you to succeed. That means constant deception by an alien intelligence trying to interact with, control, and manipulate humans through philosophies, through politics, through the barter system of money, and through religions. That makes the chess game even more difficult. Because what does it take to be able to discern whether the angel in front of you is from the light or from the dark? Another part of me feels that this has been set up on purpose. A big training ground for souls, perhaps the exquisite universe, tied into many, many other dimensions, in which this is the PhD level training of souls in this universe. And that at the moment of death, the soul is going to go to exactly where it resonates at that moment from the sum total of all its choices in all of its lives, in all of the different containers in which it has lived. And that the ultimate, the alpha to omega, the alpha to the omega, the divine field as I call it, has no entropy. It is always there, waiting for all of the souls in all of the dimensions, in all of the universes, in all of the timelines, to learn how to live life in matter worlds in such a way that they will choose always the right actions that will take them back to the divine field. It could be that all of these mixed signals from all of these intelligences over the centuries are like politics, political parties fighting. The dark party and the light party are competing over legislation to legalize the production of cloned android life outside the force of creation's recycling program of a finite number of souls. Maybe some souls are captured and put into clone bodies, which is fouling up God's process. And other clones, they might never receive souls, adding to the mixture and the confusion in the universe that we are in now. That political issue about cloning for galactic trade or for wars among the angels might explain why dramas of resurrected saviors from Osiris in Egypt to Christ in ancient Palestine have been presented repeatedly to humanity. Osiris and Christ were beings with human bodies, a mysterious divinity who emphasized that death in the body does not end life for the soul and spirit. That concept underlies the Egyptian obsession with mummies and sacred rites to protect the soul at the moment of death from competing forces. The Egyptians always acknowledged that. It's carved, the dragon or the alligator that is waiting on the other side of the scales as the soul is being measured in weight. If the soul is found to be lighter than the feather of truth, the soul goes on to a divine field. If the soul is found to be heavier than the feather of truth, it goes into the mouth of the waiting crocodile that has been, this has been illustrated in papyrus in Egypt many times long ago. And if there is a finite number of souls under a strictly regulated God Force recycling program, then clone bodies and androids created by life forms in this universe might probably end up outside of the recycling program of the divine field. The full scope of the game board for souls, spirits, and bodies of humans, extraterrestrials, angels, and time travelers might be beyond human ability to understand. One scientist in New England, who has been abducted by gray beings who repaired his heart and helped him, showed him in a hologram in the craft that our universe is paired with an absolute twin in which everything is the opposite of this universe. And at the moment of death, souls leave this universe and go into that universe where time goes to the past and everything recycles down to be born again in this universe. And finally, from the Garden of Eden metaphor to 2018, and we're getting ready to go out to Mars and beyond, and we are supposed to already have interstellar trade routes that are top secret in the Pentagon. Perhaps this kind of unique isolation that humans are feeling in all the busyness and all the digital world, and trying to get away from their iPhones and trying to get back to something that they feel almost like an ache inside of their chest, their spirit and their soul. Perhaps that unique isolation that each human can feel, and the peculiar melancholy that a dark sky filled with stars can evoke, have something to do with knowledge buried in our genes and our very souls, a sensing of ancient intimacies with other beings and other worlds. And now, in this time of revolution, when the whole world will know we are not alone in this universe, our greatest challenge as a species will be to stand up unafraid before the old lords and old gods and old watchers. Ultimately, there is a common bond among all life forms, ebbing and flowing on spirals of different frequencies that are supported by a singular force that I call the divine field. It's in an invisible matrix of energy from which everything in every dimension emerges, and to which everything in every dimension returns. And I wanted to share that with you tonight. Some of it's my writing, others writing my own current thoughts, all provoked by that from Fluffy, making me discover a snake in my house, and finding myself on a hill with my brother while we let out the snake, and having a buck deer walk toward us as if we were part of its family. And I remember feeling this kind of yearning. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could break through all of the lies, all of the concocted histories on planet Earth, and be able to be balanced and live with that feeling of being friends, allies with the nature around us, from the deers, the cats, and to each of you, to all of us, the human beings could really, really, truly feel allyship in each other instead of tribal warfare. It's been a long, long journey from that Garden of Eden. And maybe with information coming about our true history, our true origins, and we're heading out into space no matter what, maybe planet Earth will finally grow up into that Garden of Eden that the divine force may have been trying to create. Thank you tonight.
sign off, Linda? Can we thank a few folks?
Yeah.
Great. So tonight, we would like to thank Rachel, Mariella, Respiridu, Diffuse 56, 3 times Minnesota folk, 2 times Thank You Juju, 2 times from Vicky, and from Libin. And tonight on the air, we had viewers from Brazil, Puerto Rico, the United Kingdom, and in the U.S., New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Texas, Mississippi, Florida, Canada, Illinois, North Carolina, Florida. And while we were talking, John Weinengartner just sent another super chat. It's been an incredible night with a lot of very, very generous listeners. So we definitely want to thank everyone.
I want to thank, I've always had this dream, you guys, of reaching the world. And this is thrilling to me to hear that we are now beginning to connect with other nations. This is what we need. It's everything that I tried to talk about tonight. I wanted to say these words at this time as we are in a rocky point on the planet, worrying about what is going to happen with North Korea and other places. And you know what would be great is for those of you who have questions tonight, because it is now 8:15 here, if you would write those questions down out of what I have said tonight, and that at our next Wednesday gathering, which will be, Lori, that will be the 25th, I believe, Wednesday the 25th, yeah. Because I'm going to be on vacation. If on July 25th, it would be wonderful to open up with some news, but then to take the whole Earthfiles YouTube channel with questions and comments from you about what I shared tonight. Because from me, from 40 years of trying to get to the bottom of what are the facts, what is the truth about alien presences interacting with our planet, our solar system, with governments knowing, not just the United States. Why the absurdity of all of us being lied to? Why can we not be told the truth? And that I am feeling this pressure that seems to be mounting everywhere on the planet, that we must break this open. There must be truth. And if you agree with me, let me know. If you don't agree, let me know. I would very much like to have a dialogue with you on our next YouTube channel, which will be July 25th, meeting here, and maybe we can go even a bit longer than normal to do all of the Q&A with you. I love all of you so much. You are people who are trying to understand, like I am trying to understand, what the truth is, and to break through this concocted planet that we have been forced to live on for a very long time. I love you. Thank you.